past few years around Christmas, there has been a post that circulates on social media that I really appreciate, and this is what it says. These 6 days between Christmas and New Year's is the only time of the year that you should strive to do absolutely nothing. Make zero progress, take all the time off, go on a vacation from your vacation, be the least impressive version of yourself. Transform into a couch. How many of you transformed into a couch between Christmas and New Year's? Some of you? That's wonderful. I fully admire this proposal because I think rest is so important. There were only a few of you that said that you transformed into a couch, but I invite you to raise your hand, and if you're online, you can leave a comment or you can hit the like or love button. If you did any of these since December 25th, okay, maybe December 26th on, took down your Christmas tree. Anybody do that? Okay. Took down your Christmas lights outside. Okay. Put away your Christmas decorations. That's all encompassing maybe. Put away your wrapping paper and your gift bags. Okay. Ate all of your Christmas cookies and treats. They're all gone. I gave them away. That's good. Exchanged those gifts that you got that didn't fit you anymore. That was always a big thing on my parents' list growing up. Went through a phase in the week of deep cleaning where you purged clothes that you no longer wear or donated toys that your children no longer play with. Anybody do any deep cleaning or purging or any of that? I cleaned out the fridge. That was it. But there is this intense desire for some after Christmas Day is over to clean and to put away and to organize, right? But after the tree is down, and after the decorations are all put away, and after our big light display or our big blow-up characters get packed away until next year, and after all of those boxes and presents and the mess of Christmas morning is all cleaned up, what happens next? You cry. It can be a time to grieve a little bit, right? Christmas is over. Jesus is born. Now what? The last day of Christmas was Friday, so the Christmas season, those 12 days of Christmas are officially over. Yesterday, January 6th, was the day in our Christian calendar that I just told the kids about. What's the word? Epiphany. It's on your screens. So we are now in a season of the year where we talk about the Magi, the wise men from the east who saw a star rising, and they studied stars, knew that it marked the event of a king being born, and they traveled in order to find that king. So here is their story from the Gospel of Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him, and calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now, our nativity scenes don't always give us an accurate description of this story. our one here is very simple and doesn't even have the wise men. But most of them have the wise men. They are with the shepherds and everyone, right? But the wise men didn't come on the night that Jesus was born and crowd the stables with everyone else there. Notice, too, that Matthew doesn't tell us that there were 3 of them. We just know that they brought 3 gifts. We don't know how many there were. Their visit comes after Jesus has left the manger, when the Holy Family is living in a house. We heard as they entered the house, and when Jesus may have been a little older than a newborn. But what I'm drawn most to as I read this story is the travel of this group. Maybe it's because I love traveling myself, but this story is not as simple or as cute as we may imagine it to be in our minds. The Magi are most likely from Persia, which is modern-day Iran, and many estimate that it would have taken them 60 days to journey from Persia to Bethlehem, which is another good reason for us to believe that they would have come quite a bit of time after the shepherds. Have you ever wondered what their journey was like? 60 days, maybe on camels, maybe not. I like to think that the Magi were a bit lost before they found Jesus. The journey wasn't a peaceful voyage following the star that led them straight to Bethlehem. Before going to Bethlehem, they go to a much larger city, to Jerusalem. And for all we know, they were probably expecting the Jewish king to be born in the Jewish capital, right? And it was Herod, not the star, that sent them to Bethlehem. And when they got to the palace, they asked Herod about the child that has been born king of the Jews, thinking that he would know, of course, but he didn't. And so he brings in his advisors, and they told him about what the prophets wrote about a Messiah being born in Bethlehem. And Matthew says that he secretly then called for the Magi and asked them when the star exactly appeared, and then he sent them to Bethlehem. And so if we look at this through our modern day, but maybe pre-GPS lens, because that would have taken us right to Bethlehem, right? Or maybe not. Jerusalem was like a pit stop in their journey. It was a place for them to get directions. Now, once they were on the right path, they saw the star that led them directly to the house of Jesus and his parents. Maybe it disappeared and then reappeared, but maybe they were so intent on going to Jerusalem that they lost track of the star. Maybe the Magi decided to go to the palace because they didn't expect God to be born in some small, unknown town. They expected to find God in a palace, in a place of royalty. Where do you expect to find God? If I'm really honest, I expect to find God in places that are like a palace, or in specific places where I've encountered God before. I expect to find God in a sanctuary, and I expect to find God in some of my favorite places, like the beach, when I'm standing on a shoreline and I feel so small, and I realize that God is so big and in control. I expect to find God when I'm at the top of a mountain, finding the grandeur of God and the vast expanse of creation. I expect to find God in the Bible, in the stories of God's love for God's people, and the stories of Jesus and the early church. And I expect to find God during times of prayer, when I'm either crying out to God or when I quiet myself and find space to be still and listen. And I expect to find God at this communion table, right? When we sing our favorite hymn or praise song, when we share in communion together. I expect to find God when we light candles on Christmas Eve. And maybe you resonate with one of those experiences. Maybe you've thought of one of your own where you experience God. Maybe you found it in the snow yesterday, playing outside, probably not shoveling, but sledding for sure. But now, when all the presents have been opened, after Silent Night has been sung, the candles are blown out, we've eaten our fill of Christmas treats, we've taken the tree down, you might be wondering, how do I find God now? The Magi got lost looking for God in all the wrong places, But they were willing to change their course, and it changed their life. When they found where Jesus was before they even went to the house, they were overwhelmed with joy, right? When they entered the house, they knelt down to pay him homage. Now, Matthew writes 3 times in the passage, pay homage. First, the Magi said it when they asked Herod where the child was to be born. Second, it was said by Herod when he lied to the Magi, telling him that he wanted to know where the child was after they went to visit. And the third time then was when they went to see him. So I think it's a pretty important part of Matthew to write it 3 different times. So historically, paying homage means giving a formal public acknowledgement or feudal allegiance. Now, we don't live in a feudal system, but back in medieval times, you were expected to pledge your commitment or your allegiance to whomever was above you. And then it went up the whole way to the king. So in the beginning, the Magi came to Herod thinking that they would be paying homage to a political power, when in the end, they were paying homage to a baby in a very small town with 2 humble parents. But before all of that, when they tell Herod about this child who is king of the Jews and who they want to go and pay homage to, it's no wonder that Herod then is a little unnerved. He now has a rival. And from that, we sense this very stark difference between Herod and the Magi. You see, the Magi are filled with wonder and worship, but Herod is filled with anxiety and paranoia, so much so that he goes and tells the group where to go in order to fabricate a story that he will go and do the same once they return. The Magi are filled with curiosity and awe, but Herod is filled with anger. And the Magi are overwhelmed with joy, but Herod is overwhelmed with fear. He's not the star of the show. He's not the recipient of honor. And he shows his fear and his true colors later when he then, if you continue reading on in this, some of you know it, he sends for all the children in and around Bethlehem under the age of 2 to be killed, knowing and hoping that the child king would be a part of that genocide so that he could ensure his rightful place. But what I love most about the Magi is that they see right through all of that. At least they see right through him with the help of a dream that warns them not to return the way that they came. We're told by Matthew they left their own country by another road. They left for their own country by another road. And I think this phrase has so much guidance for us as we enter this new year. The Magi were really wise enough to first continue following the star and searching for Jesus in an unexpected place that went beyond their expectations. And then wise enough to follow the warning in their dream to go home a different way, knowing that Herod was not the king that they needed to obey. And that decision was bold and was risky, but the timing was just right with God's plan. Because after they left, Joseph also was told to flee to Egypt in a dream. And then, as I said, Herod realizes when they don't return, he becomes furious, orders for the massacre of all children under 2 years to happen. But Jesus is safe because of his parents' courage. And they had a 700-mile trip to go to Egypt. And as poor parents, do you know why they were able to make it? Because they had gold and frankincense and myrrh to do so. It turned out to save their lives when they needed it the most. The Magi know what it means to boldly follow. Once they met Jesus, their lives would never be the same again. Once they met Jesus, they knew they couldn't keep going along the same old pathways. It was a new day for them and a new opportunity to become part of God's great plan for creation. So by now, some of us may feel as if we're back into the same old routines, right? I feel like I wanted one more day to get the house in order. Perhaps we felt like we've been sunk back into in those routines, also back to the stress and anxiety that life can put on us. And perhaps we even feel a bit like Herod, having fear in the things that change around us, or fear from anything that tries to be greater than us. But maybe it's not too late to start our year, we're only 7 days in, by traveling a different road. We might be tired and we might be worn out, but now more than ever, we need to be a church and a people that continues to follow Jesus and to take the road that the rest of the world isn't taking right now. Maybe that means finding God in the unexpected, finding a way to give our lives more meaning with the people that surround us. Maybe boldly following Jesus means finding ways to continue to love our neighbors and to stay diligent in showing kindness and love. And maybe that's as simple as praying for someone that you're angry with right now. Or maybe it means giving generously to a friend in need or to places that are making a difference in the lives of others. We can boldly follow by finding new ways of even just being quiet with God. Have you ever considered reading through the whole Bible in a year? Or maybe you could start with a book like the Psalms and just read a chapter a day, asking God to show you something new. But we also find God, as I reminded the kids, down at this table. And every time we come to this table, we make a statement that we will boldly follow. Here at this table, we acknowledge that we're not perfect. We acknowledge that we also get lost and that sometimes we take missteps and detours, just like the Magi who stopped in Jerusalem. But when we embrace God's love here at this table, He turns our story into one of beauty. And in that, we can find Jesus being filled with awe and wonder. And when we really experience that in a world where so many leaders are striving for more power and trying to get at the most vulnerable in order to have more, we realize that we don't need to follow anything or anyone other than Jesus. Our leader, our Savior, the one who we boldly follow, and the only one that deserves our worship is Jesus. We find Jesus in the bread and in the juice, in simple elements that represent love beautifully given for you and for me. We remember at this table that on the night in which Jesus gave himself up for us, while he was sitting with his disciples in an upper room, he took bread, he gave thanks to God, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat, for this is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And likewise, when the supper was over, Jesus took the cup, gave thanks to God, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Drink from this, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." I invite you to pray with me.